Because I've been talking a lot about the Russo-Ukrainian War or, for example, colonialism, let's pull out 2 seconds and talk about a topic that is less controversial. That is the Balkans and the Yugoslav Wars. Hold on, not yet. Little pause. More specifically, the conflict between ethnic Serbs and Albanians over Kosovo. And I know that my comment section will get flooded with everybody forgot about Kosovo until it reappeared in the mainstream media in July 2022. Here from Politico, there are approximately 100,000 Serbs in Kosovo using license plates issued by Belgrade, and those are illegal in Kosovo. A very Balkan reason to fight! And then Kosovo threatened to start using fines against those drivers. Then ethnic Serbs in Kosovo started creating roadblocks and barricades using big trucks to prevent the Kosovo police from entering ethnic Serb districts. Tensions were mounting. Kosovo sent in its special forces to the border. In response, Serbia did the same thing. Eventually, the situation seemed to have calmed down until the arrest of a former Serb police officer on December 10th. That led groups of Kosovo Serbs exchanging fire with local police in the northern part of Kosovo. So what's this entire beef about? And more importantly, why should you care? Long story short, what happened in Kosovo legitimizes armed conflict in order to get independence. And many believe that the war in Donbass started because of what happened exactly in Kosovo. The relationship between Kosovo and the war in Donbass is almost impossible to ignore. How the Kosovo president shaped Putin's plan to invade Ukraine. Putin is wrong. Ukraine's Donbass is not like Kosovo. Why Putin keeps talking about Kosovo. Putin pulling pages from NATO's Kosovo playbook. And on top of this, the Serbian political claim on Kosovo is based on historical irredentism. However, this is not matched by modern demographic reality. And why did Kosovars build such a big statue of Bill Clinton in the middle of their capital?
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Nothing. Me? Just hanging around.
Since you're probably still very confused and left pretty disappointed by this quickie, let's hit round 2, but this time with a longer, raw and girthy explanation. And for that purpose, we have no other choice but to go back to 1989. In a speech made by Slobodan Milosevic, this speech turned Milosevic from a nobody into a superstar. And notice this date, 1389 to 1989. Why did he choose this date? This event was organized for the 600th anniversary of the Battle of Kosovo. Milosevic galvanized a crowd of 1 million people by saying that he would defend the rights of ethnic Serbs in Kosovo, on the exact site of the 1389 Battle of Kosovo. Once again, let's go right where it all started. The history of Kosovo.
Very well. Where do I begin?
By 1389, the Ottoman Empire was rapidly expanding, like you on a Reality Kings rerun. And the Ottoman army launched an offensive against a coalition led by Lazar of Serbia, whose army made a stand in Kosovo. During medieval times, and more specifically during the 13th and 14th centuries, Kosovo was an important political, cultural and religious center of the Serbian kingdom, to the extent where the seat of the Serbian Orthodox Church was moved to Peć. And in this golden age of Serbia, hundreds of monasteries and castles were built by the Serbs. However, this growing Serbian kingdom came to a halt in 1371, when the Turks defeated a Serbian army on the banks of the river Marica, which allowed them to conquer the south of this medieval Serbian kingdom. 25 years later, both armies faced each other again, but this time in the heartland of the Serbian kingdom, right in the middle of Kosovo. The battle was fierce. Prince Lazar was slain in battle. Murat I would also end up dead, and eventually the Serbian army was routed. Casualties were extremely heavy on both sides. However, the attrition rate played in disfavor of Serbia. So the son of Lazar, Prince Stefan Lazarevic, accepted to become a vassal of the Ottomans. And because of his vassal obligations, Prince Lazarevic even fought with the Turkish army against Timur's invading force at the Battle of Ankara in 1402. However, the Turkish army was crushed, and the political instability that followed in the Ottoman Empire allowed Serbia to regain some form of independence. But the Ottomans did not forget the Balkans.
I'll be back.
Nearly at the exact same spot in Kosovo, the Ottomans defeated a Christian coalition led by Hungary in 1448. And 10 years later, the Ottomans marched on what remained of the Serbian kingdom. Orthodox Serbs were now subjects of the Ottoman Empire. And this is where the party started. Now you might tell me, is it necessary to go through all this to explain the current situation in Kosovo? Yes. Hi and welcome to History Legends. This is a special video made possible thanks to my Patreon supporters. And quick shout out to Naidai who suggested this topic and helped with the research. If you want to support my work or participate in future videos, you can check out my Patreon. The link will be in the description below. Thank you to all of you that have already helped. And welcome to the headquarters. Being non-Muslims, this made them targets for Janissary recruitment campaigns. It was called the Devshirme system, and anyone holding a white Christian male privilege card could be enlisted in the Ottoman army. Every 4 years they would draft young boys from selected districts. These boys would then be converted to Islam, be given a Turkish name, and would start military training. Some estimate that 300 to 500,000 Christian boys from modern-day Serbia, Greece, Bulgaria, Albania, Croatia, and Hungary were forcefully recruited into the Janissaries. Lastly, Christians under Ottoman rule were forced to pay jizya, a system where non-Muslims would be subject to higher taxes. All these factors started an exodus of Christians who refused to live under Ottoman rule, and many Serbs began migrating to friendlier lands like the Kingdom of Hungary. And yes, in this case, the neighbor's grass was greener. Now we know that the Ottomans were good administrators, and almost right after the conquest in 1455, they proceeded with their first cadastral tax census for the district of Brankovic, which roughly speaking included parts of modern-day central Serbia, parts of northeastern Montenegro, and the bulk of Kosovo. According to that document, there were only 14,000 families in that area, which, let's be honest, seems very unrealistic. This fiscal census most likely left out a number of people who were not taxpayers, as well as those who were granted tax benefits by the Ottomans. However, let's take a look at the proportions of the ethnic distribution of the land. The Ottomans established that 92% of the homes were inhabited by ethnic Serbs. That means that in medieval times we have good evidence of strong Serbian presence in Kosovo. But it is also important to note that Albanian presence was reported in medieval times in the southwest region of Kosovo. Now another census was done between 1520 and 1535. Also, Ottoman admins did not show up with a list of 25 genders to choose from, only Muslim or Christian. It was reported that the district of Prizren was inhabited by roughly 18,000 households, of which 359 or 2% were Muslim households. Another census was done in Prizren in 1624, but this time by a Catholic bishop. He said that the city had only 800 Christian households, of which 200 were Albanian Catholic and 600 Orthodox Serb, compared to 12,000 Muslim households, meaning the Muslim population in Prizren accounted for roughly 89% of all inhabitants. Things heated up during the Great Turkish War between the Ottoman Empire and the Habsburg monarchy. The Austrian army, supported by Serbian militias, captured Belgrade from the Ottomans in 1688. The next logical step was to push south and march on Kosovo. And like that, the Austrians captured Pristina and Prizren. The Christians of Kosovo could see the light at the end of the tunnel when the train came towards them at full speed. A plague outbreak decimated the Habsburg army. The leftovers of the Austrian army were forced to abandon Serbia and invited the local Christians like the Orthodox Serbs to come north with them to friendlier lands. This was a no-brainer since the Serbs had openly rebelled against the Ottoman Empire, and they knew that by staying behind they would face immense backlash. In 1690, an estimated 36,000 Orthodox Serb families abandoned their homes and headed north. This migration left a lot of empty land in Kosovo. So in 1690, the Ottoman authorities encouraged Albanian tribesmen from the harsh mountain regions of northern Albania to settle in the abandoned rural households and mining settlements in Kosovo and Metohija. It's also important to mention that Albanians used to be Catholic, but during the 1600s they started mass converting to Islam. And we can see how the communities in southwest Kosovo neighboring Albania essentially followed the same pattern. So it's possible that Albanian Catholics converted to Islam to get all the benefits this implied. Once again, we have to assume that some Serbs stayed behind and that some converted to Islam in order to escape repression campaigns by the Ottoman army, or at least in appearance, hoping the day would come when they could return to orthodoxy. If these Islamized Serbs managed to preserve their language and faith for decades, over time they assimilated into the dominant Albanian culture and adopted the Albanian language. Now here comes the fifth Austro-Turkish War, where the Ottoman Empire reconquered large parts of Serbia, as well as its capital Belgrade.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Yet again, thousands of Orthodox Serbs fled from Ottoman reprisals, possibly followed by new waves of conversion to Islam. But let's fast forward a century to the Napoleonic Wars. Serb rebels launched multiple uprisings against Ottoman troops. Numerous battles followed. For example, they were victorious at the Big Battle of Mishar. Regardless, fighting continued almost non-stop from 1804 to 1817. Finally, the Ottoman Empire had enough, and they recognized Serbia as an autonomous principality. But in this age of Serbian Reconquista, in 1867, through political pressure, Prince Mihailo Obrenović got the Ottoman garrisons from Serbian cities to withdraw. And since things are always more fun in threes, then came the Serbian-Ottoman War of 1876 to 1878. That cemented the independence of Serbia from the Ottoman Empire. As the Serbian army was reaching down south, penetrating enemy lines along the Južna Morava River, they arrived in the city of Niš and expelled tens of thousands of Albanians to the Turkish vilayet of Kosovo. Essentially, as the Serbs were liberating their homeland, they considered any Muslim and Albanian to be an agent of Constantinople. These Albanians who had lived in the region for centuries were now refugees and left with nothing. With reason they were angry, but then took revenge on local Kosovo Serbs by raiding their lands and property. And this vicious cycle would continue over and over. This expulsion of ethnic Albanians sparked a national awakening in Albania. A political party named the League of Prizren was formed in Kosovo and called for the autonomy and defense of Albanian lands. They armed 30,000 men to rise against the Ottomans. But after a long campaign, by April 1881, the Turkish army had defeated the League of Prizren. The League of Prizren, remember that name, very important for later. Then we get the new Ottoman census in Kosovo in the year 1897. Ottoman authorities counted 633,000 Muslims and 333,000 Christians in Kosovo. For example, the district of Pristina had 56,000 inhabitants, of which 71% were Muslim. And fun fact, 3% of them were Catholics, mostly Albanians. But during those years, the weakening of the Ottoman Empire led to a rise in lawlessness. Swiss historian Oliver Jens Schmidt told Austrian newspaper Der Standard that in the late 1800s, Albanians had numerous privileges and were deliberately used by the Ottomans as a factor of order. He talks about a report from the Austro-Hungarian consul in Mitrovica. I quote, "The popular Albanian national sport of looting and abusing the Serb population continues to thrive." And in 1901, armed Albanian groups went on a rampage targeting Serb settlements. Nationalism was now brewing in the Balkans, and by 1912, the Albanians would rise once again against the Ottomans. But this time, the fire would spread all over the Balkans. Bulgaria, Greece, Serbia, and Montenegro all united against the Ottoman Empire, which ended for the Turks like those movies you watch at night. In the end, this Balkan alliance decisively defeated Ottoman troops, and the Serbian army swept into their historical heartland for the first time since their defeat by the Turks in 1389. But upon their arrival, they were shocked. Shocked to find out that it wasn't the same land they had left behind centuries ago.
I want to see.
No, you do not!
Because Kosovo was now mainly inhabited by Albanian Muslims. Of course, what did they expect? You can't even let your girlfriend go on a semester abroad without stuff happening. So imagine what happens after half a millennium. So during the course of the Balkan Wars, it became apparent that the Albanians did not consider the Serbs as liberators. Nearly half of all Albanian lands were annexed by Montenegro and Serbia. Thousands of Albanian irregulars defended Kosovo and Metohija against advancing Serbian forces. According to this Austro-Hungarian diplomat in Belgrade, the Serbian army took a tough stand against Albanian guerrillas for their misuse of the white flag. Essentially, they ambushed Serbian soldiers by faking to surrender. As a result, according to Albanian sources, this march of the Serbian army into Kosovo left thousands of Albanians dead. Countless were forced to abandon their homes and leave, most to Albania but many to Turkey. In the days that followed, official communiques from Austro-Hungarian diplomats on the ground mentioned the destruction of Albanian villages, rumors of planned assassination of all male Albanians, looting and particularly intense acts of violence by Serbian irregulars in Prizren. Now came one man that history largely forgot about. A journalist working for a Ukrainian newspaper named Leon Trotsky. Turns out he was there in Kosovo in 1912, and he reported on the widespread massacres of Albanians. Now, as usual, all these press reports have to be taken with a pinch of salt. You see, Austria-Hungary was unhappy of the victory of the Balkan League. An independent Albanian state was in Vienna's interest to prevent the expansion of Serbia along the Adriatic coast. So using the power of press and informational warfare, Austria-Hungary did everything in its power to push reports of excessive violence by the Serbian army and campaigned for the recognition of Albania as an independent country. And it worked, as Serbian forces had to withdraw back into Kosovo. This animosity between Serbs and Albanians was well exemplified during World War I. During the Great Retreat of the Serbian army towards the Adriatic coast, Albanians happily ambushed and harassed the exposed Serbian columns in tight mountain passes. Now, the Great War ends in 1918, and this marks the creation of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia. A beautiful idea that should have better been left on paper. As if Austria-Hungary was not enough, South Slavs from the Balkans were like, let's just retry the experiment. But this time drunk on Rakia. The Serbian-led government pushing the narrative on how rich Kosovo actually was, and then launched a colonization campaign that brought 60,000 ethnic Serbs and Montenegrins from all corners of Yugoslavia into the region, promising them 10,000 dinars per family, 5 hectares of land, no taxes, and whatnot. These arrivals artificially boosted the share of the Serbian population in Kosovo from 26% to 34% within 15 years. Now, there was another reason behind this colonization campaign. Yugoslavia was suffering from a brain drain and wanted to curb this unrelentless migration to America, because 500,000 Slavs from the Balkans had already left. And that's how some Serbs got tricked and chose to immigrate to the mythical heartland of Kosovo instead of Canada or Argentina. Let's just say that they bitterly regretted their decision. Truth be told, the government neglected these colonists. And that was not even the worst. The colonists arrived in a hostile environment. They constantly got into armed conflict with ethnic Albanians that saw them as a threat. Kosovar Albanians rebelled against the arrival of those colonists. Armed gangs would threaten the colonists, destroy their farms, and kill all the cattle. These rebels were called Kachak, or rather the Serbs called them like that because it means bandit. They numbered around 10,000 armed militiamen fighting in the mountains. They launched multiple uprisings in 1920, 1921, 1923, and 1924. The Yugoslav army fought this guerrilla by burning entire villages and threw massive artillery strikes on enemy positions. When the Kingdom of Yugoslavia abolished the Ottoman feudal system, many Albanians were then left without any land and income. Many of them had no other choice but to leave. Plus, any land belonging to Kachaks and their relatives was confiscated. Despite this victory of the Yugoslav army, because of this insecurity, an estimated 65% of colonists illegally sold the land, the machines and the cattle they were provided by the government and simply returned to their hometowns. Alright, so let's summarize. After coercion and colonization, Yugoslavia found a new way to de-Ottomize the Balkans. Turkey had just gotten out of a nasty war against Greece in 1922. And to avoid a new war, both countries agreed to a population exchange. Entire regions of Anatolia were now empty when hundreds of thousands of Orthodox Greeks left. Yugoslavia was salivating and suggested an idea. Yugoslavia started negotiations with Turkey for the resettlement of Muslims from the Balkans towards the depopulated parts of Turkey. These talks dragged on until 1938, when Turkey finally agreed to resettle a first batch of 200,000 Muslims from Kosovo and Macedonia from 1939 to 1944. A peaceful outcome was just about to be reached when, With the Axis occupation of Yugoslavia during World War II, ethnic Serbs and Montenegrins were persecuted by German and Italian forces, but more often than not with the help of local Albanian paramilitary groups. And these Albanians seeked revenge for past injustices. Although the situation in Kosovo was not as bad as in other parts of Yugoslavia, some sources mention up to 5,000 deaths and another 70 to 100,000 were expelled from Kosovo or simply fled from the hostile region by themselves.
Oh shit, here we go again.
And likewise in 1945, the defeat of Axis forces meant severe reprisals against Albanian collaborators, but also Albanian partisans that cheered for an autonomous region. This is when we enter the modern era. As you can see, this is why it's important to talk about the history, because there's a lot of bad blood between the two communities. Right after World War II, Marshal Tito was now the leader of the multicultural Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia. And his worldview was the following: a strong Yugoslavia needs a weak Serbia. And he did everything in his power to ban the return of Serbs that had fled during the war to go back into Kosovo. Although Serbs were the largest ethnic group in Yugoslavia, however, the demographic landscape in Kosovo was completely different. By 1953, 65% of the population were Muslim Albanians, and they went through a baby boom. Let me just tell you that Albanian Chads went to work and never wasted any ammo. One generation later, almost on the dot, we have now a bustling Albanian youth in Kosovo that becomes increasingly defiant of the central power of Yugoslavia. The 1974 constitution granted the province of Kosovo full autonomy and almost the same rights as Yugoslavia's 6 republics. The constitution also placed Serbia, whose population was 40% of the Yugoslav total and occupied 1/3 of the territory of the federation, now into a federal minority of 1 against 8, with its 2 autonomous provinces able to vote against it. Let's just say that ethnic Serbs were not really happy of this outcome. By March 1981, Kosovo Albanian students organized protests seeking for even more autonomy for Kosovo, but within Yugoslavia. As you can imagine, this sparked even more tensions between the Albanian and the Serb communities. Added to the fact that by 1981, 3 out of 4 Kosovars were ethnic Albanians. And let's just say that a democratic referendum about the autonomy of Kosovo would easily hand over the victory to the Albanian community. At the same time, Serbia feared that by allowing this autonomy to Kosovo, it would open a Pandora box that would trickle a similar movement all around Yugoslavia. This Albanian youth was also becoming more aggressive in their demands. And this overall hostility pushed many Kosovo Serbs to pack their bags, sell their land at a discount, and simply leave. And this movement further deepened the demographic rift. Yes, I know this is quite repetitive, but then came a man from the shadows. Starting in August 1987, Slobodan Milosevic pledged to protect Kosovo Serbs, using the myth of the Golden Age, that Kosovo was Serbia's ancestral land since medieval times. He became an instant hero not only of Kosovo Serbs, but also by ethnic Serbs all over the country that not only represented 36% of all Yugoslavs, but spread out over multiple republics, and thus in many cases, in minority. 1991 marks the start of the Yugoslav Wars. The war itself is outside the scope of this video. As a quick summary, Macedonia had an easy way out. Slovens fought a 10-day war, Croats ended up fighting a nasty war against Serbs, but also against Bosniaks until 1994. And the key factor is that in each of these cases, Macedonians, Slovens, and Croats formed the majority of the population in their respective republic. For example, Croats accounted for 78% of all inhabitants within the borders of Croatia. And rightfully so, Albanian Kosovars then asked, why did Macedonia, Slovenia, and Croatia all got their independence but not us? The Kosovo situation posed a real dilemma for the Serbian government. They reattempted very bad ideas from the past, just with a couple more shots of rakia. So this is how they came up with a brilliant new idea, a colonization program. In the 1990s, the goal was to bring ethnic Serbs from the newly independent countries into Kosovo. Then around 10,000 Serb refugees from Krajina and over 2,000 from Bosna, or in English, Bosnia, were resettled in Kosovo. But they were not alone. In March 1992, for example, 3,000 people from the Serb minority in Albania had also immigrated to Kosovo. And the Albanians knew the trick and did the exact same thing they did 60 years before. The moment they started fighting in Kosovo and through many intimidation campaigns, 9,000 of these Serb refugees left, as well as 20,000 local Kosovo Serbs. And they never returned. What a disaster for Serbia. In the end, the lack of political alternatives for Albanians in Kosovo inevitably led to armed confrontation. And this is how the Kosovo Liberation Army came to be, or the Ushtria Shlirimtare e Kosoves, the Kosovo War. After the events of the Yugoslav Wars and massacres like at Srebrenica, the public opinion had a very negative image of Serbia. Officially, the objective of the KLA was the independence of Kosovo. But its real goal was to fulfill the vision of the League of Prizren, that is the establishment of a greater Albania, encompassing Western Macedonia, Eastern Montenegro, Southern Serbia, but also Ioannina and Corfu in Greece. In 1996, the KLA consisted of only a few hundred ill-equipped fighters. Most importantly, the Kosovo War was an ethnic war and not a religious war. Albanians of Muslim, Catholic, and even Orthodox faith fought side by side against Serbia. But with the support of German secret services, things started improving. The turning point was the political instability in Albania in 1997. This allowed the KLA to get access to a great quantity of weapons, like the Automatiku Shiptar. And by the second half of 1998, the KLA had grown to 17,000 armed troops. The Kosovo Liberation Army used typical guerrilla tactics centered on the Drenica mountain. Ambushes, hit-and-run attacks, you name it. According to the UN, because of all the violence committed by both sides, 850,000 Albanians and 200,000 Serbs left Kosovo as refugees during the war. Now, if the Yugoslav army could encircle the Drenica mountain, the entire logistics of the KLA was going through its rear operating bases located in Albania, out of reach of Serbian forces. And according to James Bissett, a former Canadian ambassador to Yugoslavia, as early as 1998, the CIA, assisted by the British Special Air Service, were arming and training Kosovo Liberation Army members in Albania to foment armed rebellion in Kosovo. And this is where we're entering the minefield, because one of the main reasons presented in favor of NATO's intervention proved to be total fake news, aka Operation Horseshoe. But that topic deserves a self-standing video. Since they were completely surrounded, the KLA's guerrilla campaign in the middle of Kosovo did not go very well. And in order to help them, The KLA forces in Albania all throughout 1998 tried to break through the border in order to support them, but every time they got stopped and pushed back with heavy losses. Now comes 1999. The KLA infiltrated the border with some British SAS that would guide NATO airstrikes from the ground. And on the 24th of March, NATO launched its bombing campaign against military and civilian targets all over Serbia.
Our mission is clear: to demonstrate the seriousness of NATO's purpose so that the Serbian leaders understand the imperative of reversing course, to deter an even bloodier offensive against innocent civilians in Kosovo, and if necessary, to seriously damage the Serbian military's capacity to harm the people of Kosovo. In short, if President Milosevic will not make peace, we will limit his ability to make war.
In early April 1999, KLA forces attempted to break through Serbian positions along the border near the city of Košare. 2,500 KLA rebels faced 2,500 Serbian soldiers. According to Serbian sources, KLA forces were directly supported by NATO artillery and aviation during their attack on Serbian positions. In the end, the KLA was pushed back, and both sides suffered around 100 fighters KIA. While this battle was taking place, on the 26th of May, another KLA grouping launched an attack 50 kilometers to the south against the Pastrik mountaintop, with another roughly 2,000 men on each side. This attack also ended up being pushed back. Eventually, NATO's bombing campaign took its toll. We're talking about 1,300 cruise missiles and 37,000 cluster bombs. On June 10, 1999, Milosevic folded. The Kumanovo Agreement was signed, and all Yugoslav army, paramilitaries, and police forces had to pull out of Kosovo. On June 11th, a 3,800-strong NATO contingent entered the province. Here you can see German commander Helmut Haff telling Serbian officers that they have only 30 minutes to leave Kosovo.
You have to leave within 30 minutes, and it's 11 o'clock now. There's no moment, there's an order. That's the end of the discussion. You have now 28 minutes.
The fighting in Kosovo, as well as NATO's bombing campaign, cost the lives of 659 Serbian soldiers and 342 policemen, compared to 4,000 military fatalities for KLA forces. The departure of Serbian military forces also meant that Kosovo Serbs would be left unprotected. And we know what happened next.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Many of them were subjected by intimidation and violence from returning Albanian refugees. The UN Refugee Agency estimated that 50,000 ethnic Serb civilians had to abandon their homes. They wrote, over 90 mixed villages in Kosovo have now been emptied of Serb inhabitants, and other Serbs continue leaving, either to be displaced in other parts of Kosovo or simply by fleeing into central Serbia. And if you thought that after all this is where the trouble ends, you are mistaken. Immediately after, ethnic Albanians formed the Liberation Army of Preševo, which started an armed insurgency in the Albanian majority region of the Preševo Valley in southern Serbia. This conflict lasted until the 31st of August 2001 with the defeat of the LAP. And while all this was taking place, repeat, in Macedonia, where thousands of ethnic Albanians enlisted in the National Liberation Army and where they fought the Macedonia security forces. On the 12th of November 2001, Albanian insurgents agreed to disarm in exchange for greater political rights to Macedonian Albanians. And finally, this marked the end of the Yugoslav Wars, and Kosovo proclaimed its independence in 2008. Future developments. At this moment, the war in Ukraine has shown the cost of armed confrontation. And although the future of Kosovo remains uncertain, as of today it seems things are starting to improve. On the 18th of March 2023, we read Serbia-Kosovo Gentleman's Agreement on EU-backed deal unpacked. While Pristina committed to more autonomy for Serb-majority areas, and Belgrade agreed not to block Kosovo's membership in international organizations. The European Parliament also made it clear to Serbia that the normalization of relationships between Serbia and Kosovo is a priority and a requirement for joining the European Union, something which could be greatly beneficial for Serbia in terms of economics. At the same time, if Europe recognizes the independence of Kosovo, this could lead to a snowball effect. Thank you for watching until the end. That's all I have for you today. Let me know in the comment section what you thought of my analysis. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel, make sure to check out my Patreon and PayPal. The links are in the description below.